welcome to everyone. I'm James Cole. I'm the physiotherapist and clinic leader at South Melbourne. We've invited everyone across multiple sites or multiple centres to this talk. Caity, we're very lucky to have Caity and the team at OnCore Nutrition working out of the Keys of South Melbourne. So the team at OnCore Nutrition we've worked with for many years. Both at Caulfield, they worked down at Torquay, they've been at South Melbourne for a couple of years as well, and we've had some great outcomes from them. I think it's also important, you know, as Keys we celebrate strength training, we celebrate physical activity, but there's multiple pillars to good health, and you find that if you get one right, the others become easier to work on, and whether that's sleep, whether that's diet, whether that's mental health, and whether that's your physical health as well. So we're very lucky to have Caity, who's a wealth of knowledge around dietetics and looking after ourselves. So she'll be talking today about lockdown eating and how to navigate that. So I will hand over to Caity, and thanks for helping us out today.
Yeah, beauty. Thanks, JC. Gosh, my head's going to be so big I won't be able to fit through the doorway after that. But it's such a pleasure to be here today to be able to talk with you all about lockdown and nutrition and how we can support our health during this really challenging time. So what I'd ask as well is I would love to hear any and all questions you have about this topic. So just pop them in the Q&A box and we will have plenty of time at the end to be able to discuss any ideas or questions that you have along the way. So that said, I'm going to jump on and share my screen, and we're all looking, thumbs up, JC, if we're all looking good. Beauty. Okie doke. Great. So let's begin. So when your home becomes your office and your cafe and your gym and your haven, it can be really, really tricky to establish a routine with everything. Not to mention core, we have been really like one of our core values during this time has been making sure that we're here to support our patients to ensure that their bodies and their minds are as nourished as possible, and also just to help keep everything together during all the different COVID challenges that have come up. So one of the pillars, I guess, that we have been working with our patients is keeping a bit of a routine. So for a lot of us, our routine used to be commuting to the office. You know, we'd have lunch times pretty regulated. Everyone would go out and get sushi or get something, you know, in the city. And then you'd have the time, you'd come home, you might do a workout, you know, it was pretty structured and regimented. However, now it can be really easy to, you know, wake up 5 minutes before your first Zoom meeting starts, roll out of bed, chuck in a nice, you know, nice top on the top, and then just, you know, your PJ pants on the bottom, which nothing wrong with that. But to try and keep ourselves to a bit of a schedule and sneak in a little bit of normalcy where possible, we've really been recommending a bit of a routine. So for example, if you used to have lunch at around 12:30 as your lunch break, keeping that as the same. The other thing that we know is important is having your snacks and your tea breaks as well, because whilst it can be, especially when we're at home, really easy to kind of work through and feel like you're on a roll and you want to keep going, we know that breaks can be really supportive to refueling our body, refocusing, and just giving ourselves that little burst of concentration throughout the rest of the day as well. Something else that I've been noticing with a lot of my patients is forgetting to drink water. So they'll tell me things like, well, Caity, when I was at work, it was fine. I'd have my drink bottle, I'd get through a couple per day. But at home, it's just different. We don't have those same visual cues around to, you know, grab a glass of water before we get our cup or things like that. So forgetting to drink is another big thing that I work on with my patients, making sure that they're really well hydrated, which will keep our concentration, our energy levels, everything else just ticking along really well. The other thing that I guess has come up from working from home is figuring out a really good workspace. So positioning yourself, and you know, sometimes we don't have many options, which is understandable, but positioning yourself in a place that is comfortable, and that also perhaps you're not in direct view of the fridge all day, because if that is what you're staring at, if you're looking up from your screen and staring right into the pantry or the fridge, it's just a cue to your brain to say, hey, I'm ready for a break, I'm ready to snack. So there are, I guess, a couple of tips around routine that we've been using with some of our patients. The other thing is, and it sounds a little bit woo, but I promise you everything that we recommend is very evidence-based. So there are many reasons why we eat. And like Daisy touched on before, we eat for emotional support, we eat because we're bored, we eat because we want the taste. There are so many other things that we do around eating beyond just it being nutrients and hunger. So another question that we ask our patients is getting them to check in with what's happening in the world. So why do they find themselves going to the cupboard? Why do they find themselves going to the fridge? Is it genuine hunger? Is it for support, bored, procrastinating? Is it just overwhelming stress, anxiety, emotions, all kind of bubbling up? The idea is to kind of sit with yourself for a second and figure out what's happening in the world. Now, that said, I'm conscious that this is not going to happen every time. I would be lying if I, haven't, gotten to the pantry and realized halfway through eating some biscuits that, oh, I actually don't really want these. I'm just, all of a sudden realized I'm here, right? So this idea of checking in doesn't happen every time, but it's just a good reminder to kind of clue into what's happening with your body, because sometimes it can really help reveal some patterns around your feelings, your eating behaviors, and really what's driving what's happening with you. So, as I alluded to a little bit, often I'm working with patients on kind of that hunger versus not hungry eating styles. So, those little internal check-ins can really help ourselves understand the physiological and psychological components to hunger. So, specifically, I guess this is the being hungry or being not hungry but still eating. So here on this slide, you can see that we've got a beautiful fresh array of fruit and veggies, which sometimes you might feel like enjoying, but other times you might feel inclined to reach for the biscuit jar and different parts of the pantry. All are valid, but the idea is we're doing that checking in to say, am I hungry for food or am I hungry for something else? The other thing, I've mentioned a couple of reasons why we might eat even though we're not hungry, but we can also eat because it just fits our schedule. So if you're busy at work and that you're not going to get a break until 3 o'clock when your next meeting lets up, you might eat before that, or you might preempt that you're going to have a big workout in the evening, so kind of fueling your body for that as well. And all of those options are totally fine. Again, it's just really having a greater understanding of what's going on in our own bodies. So, hunger and fullness. Again, a topic that I talk about with almost every patient that I see. So now if we think we've checked in with our body, and we've identified what's happening, why we're in the cupboard, why we're in the fridge, let's have a bit of a chat about a couple of strategies with our hunger and our fullness cues. So there's a scale called the hunger and fullness scale. That is regularly what I use with my patients. The idea is that at 10, it is that feeling of, you've had a beautiful big dinner or lunch. You might have a little bit of reflux, you might have, really, really full tummy, want to have a nap, unbutton the top of your jeans, like that kind of fullness. Then we have 5, which is 5, which is neutral, no hunger, no fullness. You're just kind of like feeling pretty good. And then on the other end of the scale, we have 0 or 1, which is super hungry. So you might be faint, you might get the shakes. It's that ravenous feeling where you just want to eat everything in the house. So that's kind of the scale, and let's break that down in how I use it in practice. So this scale can help us identify the different body cues that are going on. As as babies, we're born with that innate ability to be able to know when we need to eat, when we're full, when we're hungry, all of that kind of stuff. But over time, by virtue of, a whole host of different things, we kind of lose that connection to feeling those feelings. So the idea is that tuning into these signals can really help us know when, what, and how much we need to eat. So that activity that I described before with that hunger fullness scale, the idea is using it to explore your current level of being hungry. So for example, we could do that now. We could think, okay, so for me, I've just had lunch and I had a lovely salad sandwich for lunch and that was great. And I'm feeling pretty satisfied. So maybe I'd rate myself like a 7. So I'm feeling not super full, but a good amount of full. So the idea with this tool is that you're using it to kind of check in with your body to figure out where you are up on the scale. And really, we don't want to be too far at either end. We want to rein it in to be in a nice, more gentle range so that we can make more considered choices around our eating. It's not a tool to use to restrict your food or to not eat. It's really just a tool to be curious with your own body cues. The other thing is with the numbers, they're also individual. So the idea is the more you practice it, the more you'll be able to go, oh, actually, what I thought was a 7 was maybe actually a 6 and I was a bit hungrier than I thought. So it's all kind of about calibrating this to your own body to use as a tool to apply to your eating as well. So with this, I guess the caveat here is that I am in no way saying that this is something that you need to do for every meal. So like I said before, life is busy. There are a whole host of different competing factors. The idea is that it's just one of the tools that we have in our toolbox to help you explore how you're feeling throughout the day. It doesn't need to be anything in depth, so you don't really need to reflect on it too much, just a bit of a check-in to see where you place yourself. So as I said before, the ideal zone of eating is kind of between that 4 to 7, because we really want to avoid those extremes, which helps us not eat past satisfaction, but on the other end, also not wait till we're ravenous and want to eat everything in the house. So another strategy that I regularly use with my patients is, so the idea is that at the first moment of getting some of those food cravings creeping in, the idea is to take a beat and identify how you're really feeling. So, okay, am I hungry, or am I bored, or am I worried or fearful, or whatever else is happening in our worlds? So the idea is to pop a timer on your phone or on the, on your laptop, whatever works. Take 10 minutes, wait it out, and then kind of check back in and think, okay, how am I feeling now? Am I still really craving whatever that thing was? Am I still feeling really hungry? What's going on? So often my patients find that after this, I call them like circuit breaker activity. So after the circuit breaker activity, let's say have a beat. And they actually, often they'll say, you know what, I wasn't really hungry. I was bored, or I was tired, or I was restless, or I needed a break, whatever else is happening. But that said, if after the circuit breaker activity, you wait for 10 minutes and you go, you know what, I actually really want X, Y, Z, you have full permission to enjoy it. So this is not about restricting. This is not about, you can't have those things, you can't have those cravings. It's really just about being curious with our own bodies. So after that time, you're like, you know what, I really want that food. I'm sitting down, enjoying it, and then in the knowledge that, that's what you really needed to do. This exercise also kind of just helps us clarify as clinicians, what people really want, and also helping people enjoy food without guilt, which is really, really key. So this leads us on to a pretty hot button topic, which is mindful eating, or eating mindfully. So often we can really find ourselves eating on autopilot, whether that's eating in front of a TV, we've got our screens, we've got our phones, we're maybe multitasking at work, all of these different things. It might be grabbing a couple of things to snack on as you're doing housework, or, whatever else is happening. So this autopilot eating, I guess, has a couple of things that we want to avoid. It kind of doesn't allow us to eat without distraction and really cue into whether we're full, whether we're hungry, whether we want this food, whatever else. So I have a couple of tips around eating mindfully and what we recommend to our patients. So the idea is to serve up your food on a plate. As I mentioned a couple of times, it's all well and good, especially when you're getting to that, 2, 3 really starving end of the hunger fullness scale, where you're like, I just need food now, I'm starving, I'm on the go. Really easy to, grab and go a couple of bits and pieces from the pantry, and then think like, oh, I didn't actually really enjoy any of that food. It's not what I wanted. Didn't really fill me up. So the idea is serving your food on a plate. We also say serving it to someone that you really like. So serving it to, a friend or a parent or a partner in a way that's really appetizing. Because it's not just the saying that we definitely, we eat with our eyes. It's always nice to sit down and have food a little bit more mindfully. The next thing is serving how much you want. Like I mentioned before, rather than eating, a couple of Vita-Weeks or crackers out of a packet, serves a 4, 10, however many you feel like, pop it onto a plate, prepare it nicely, and then sit down and eat it. Because that way we're also just enabling ourselves to enjoy that food more, and then focus on the task at hand rather than, multitasking. The other thing is moving away from your desk, sitting down somewhere nice, or if your desk at the moment is a kitchen table, popping everything off to a different spot, even if it's on the floor for a second, sitting down, grabbing a knife and fork, making yourself a cuppa, having a drink, just enjoying that moment and having a nice, clear, calm space to eat in. The other thing is switching off your devices. So very enjoyable and fun. And again, I would be lying if I said that I don't do it as well, but eating in front of the TV or, eating while you're scrolling Instagram or TikTok or Facebook or whatever you're doing is again a bit of a distraction. So pop your devices off. It's only going to be for 20 minutes. It'll all be there when we get back. So having a moment just to sit down uninterrupted to eat your meals is really great. The other thing is giving yourself time and space to savor your eating experience. So a really good thing about lockdown is that we do have some more time than usual, especially if you're used to commuting. Gives us a little bit of that time back. So take the time, sit down uninterrupted, and have that space to really savor the different meals that you've made. Because we know that, sitting down, having a calm meal is a really good way just to tune into how you're feeling. So boredom eating. It is just a way of life. It's just a fact of life. There are going to be times where you're going to eat and it's unnecessary, and that is absolutely fine. I guess in practice, when you're eating more often for boredom rather than for nutrition, that's when we kind of come up with a couple of strategies. So if you find that you are just snacking and snacking and snacking out of boredom, here are a couple of strategies that I give to patients to kind of break that up. So again, with my favorite phrase, the circuit breaker activities, you can take a walk to your letterbox, around the block, paint your nails, pat your dogs, or take them for a walk, pat your cat, do 10 push-ups, to have whatever you like. So the idea is that circuit breaker, or I guess like wedge activity that we're doing prior to our meal, just enables us to have that foresight. And it's just another example of those 10-minute challenges that I was talking about before. I guess on a larger scale, so using this time to your advantage, doing an online course. There are so many interesting, there's edX, there's Duolingo, so many amazing, interesting apps and websites and things where you can do free courses to, upskill a little bit and have something enjoyable to do to keep your mind clocking away. Maybe doing a puzzle. My supervisor she adores puzzles, so she that's her evening blind down activity. The other thing could be like paint by numbers is another one a lot of my patients are doing at the moment. Making something that are like kits you can get to make stuff out of clay. reading a book, you know, planting, doing some gardening, even, I don't know, if you're sick of your space and you've been redecorating, popping together some IKEA furniture, you know, there are so many other different things that we can do. And then again, checking in to see how you're going, if you do need that food, and then moving on from there. So another pretty hardline approach that I have with some patients is, if we've tried a couple of these things and they say, Caity, I just cannot have this food in the house. Just as soon as it's there, I'm just eating all of it and I don't enjoy it. So look, if you're struggling to stop at like 1 or 2 Tim Tams and just feel rubbish and guilty, I would prefer you just not to buy those things and just take a bit of a beat from them. So an analogy I often use is, if you're trying to quit smoking, would you have packets of cigarettes in your cupboard, in your fridge, in your desk drawer, all around you, you know, constantly tempting you? Probably not. So similar things apply with our food. If there is a food that is your kryptonite, and no matter how many mindful moments and circuit breaker activities and things that you do, you cannot stop at 1 or 2 or however many make you satiated, and you just end up feeling rubbish, I would much prefer you just not to buy it, and then, you know, rework that relationship a little bit. So it's kind of like, you know, dangling this carrot in front of yourself, and then it's just really cruel. So we want to be kind to ourselves. And again, I know that sounds a little bit woo, but practicing self-compassion, especially at this stage, is really key. So, you know, take a moment to be kind to yourself, be a bit more mindful with your shopping. So don't shop hungry. I've had a lot of patients that really enjoy click and collect for a myriad of reasons, especially with the current climate, but also because it enables them to organize their grocery list in a way where they're not being tempted by different things in the shelves, because you actually have to, you know, search everything up, and it's a little bit harder to pop those bargain specials in your trolley that you might not necessarily want. The other thing is checking in with your own personal goals. So perhaps if you have a personal goal around weight management, for example, check in prior to having, you know, that food that might make you feel guilty, and think like, is this in line with my goals? Is this going to make me feel good? Because if it, you know, if you're able to enjoy something without guilt, by all means, I'm very happy for you to have it. But it's that thing of, if you feel like, I'm going to feel like really good for a second and then really, really terrible for the rest of the day, we want to avoid that. We want to make smart choices and tailor our behavior a little bit. So the other thing, I guess, is research has shown that visual exposure to high-calorie foods stimulates a part of your brain that modulates impulse control. So in turn, it's this kind of all or nothing mentality where you're biologically driven to have more, and your cravings are increased, and your amounts of eating are increased, because it's just this biological drive that we have within our bodies. So I guess that's one of those other reasons why I'm recommending having your workspace or your relaxation space be as removed from the kitchen as possible, so you're not just constantly presented with that visual stimuli. The other side of this is deprivation is not something that we recommend. So we're very, I guess in my own practice as well, I'm very hard line that if you say to yourself, I can't have this, I can't have that, I'm never going to have sugar, I'm never going to have biscuits, I'm never going to have whatever else might be the thing that you enjoy, all you're going to want to do is have that thing. We're only human, right? If we tell ourselves, well, you can't have this, can't have that, that deprivation really drives this biological urge to binge on foods. We also know that this is really ineffective for long-term weight loss and incredibly damaging to our relationship with food and our bodies. So the idea is that we can enjoy everything in moderation, and it's about finding what that is to suit your body. Is the one last thing that I would say with this is that a lot of these cyclic binge and then restriction series, they cause us to feel very guilty, to feel shame, to feel really stressed. And all of that stuff increases a hormone called cortisol. Now, again, back to my beloved research, we know that cortisol is a hormone that actually drives our body to crave things that are higher in carbohydrates. So, sugars and white breads and refined carbohydrates, because our brain is really clever and it knows, oh, that's going to give me a quick burst of energy and enable me to keep going on about my day. So that's another reason why we want to have a really balanced, positive relationship with food, is because that increased stress is just going to drive us to be craving those foods as well. So I don't know about you guys, and I mean, there's been a few iterations of lockdown from the first one, but I know that, first lockdown, we're all making banana bread. I started making sourdough, which I don't know how, but I've still kept up, so I'm pretty proud of that. But I think that something that's happened out of these lockdowns is a lot of people have been cooking a little bit more than they usually have, which is amazing, really great. Because I'm a dietitian, but I really love food. And I think that it's fantastic that people are engaged and creative in their kitchens as well. So again, with all of this extra time in our hands, the idea is using it to explore and experiment with different recipes and ingredients that you might not have had before. Cooking can be really relaxing and therapeutic, especially if it's something you enjoy. You can even, something that we did as a company is we have this big thread of really good recipes that we've tried, and we will send them to each other. So if we've tried, there's a really good stew that one of the other dietitians made the other day. So it was like a chickpea and eggplant stew. So she popped it into the list for us all to make. So if you're feeling, you want to be creative and do something social as well, that could be a really great idea. Doing, Zoom cooking with your friends over or online would be great. Just getting a little bit more creative in the kitchen is fantastic. So the other reason, I guess, why cooking in our own kitchens is a great idea is that research has illustrated that home cooking versus takeaway can change the actual energy content of the meal. So we know that cooking at home, there's usually 20% fewer calories or kilojoules for the exact same meal. There's also, all of the love and energy put into the cooking as well. So there's a specific study that I often reference. It was 11,000 people who were studied, and they were found that those who ate at home or cooked, 5 meals per week had better body composition. So they were 25% less likely to have excess body fat. They ate more fruit and veg, and they also had greater food enjoyment, which is another key thing about practice. Another recommendation that I have is that if the idea of sourcing the ingredients is a little bit stressful, because I totally get supermarkets, especially at the moment, can be a little bit of a anxiety-inducing environment. So restaurant cooking boxes, there's, your local restaurants, they need a little bit of support more than ever, but there's Providor or, just different local restaurants have their own boxes. They can be really great to cook a delicious meal together. The other reason why these are really good is they're a little bit more foolproof. So if you're not a natural in the kitchen, which is absolutely fine, you might find that, it's a lot of it's kind of like reheating or like very basic cooking skills. So you'll feel like you have achieved a whole lot by putting together this beautiful chef-made meal, but then the investment isn't too hard. So that's another recommendation about just getting a bit more enjoyment back with our cooking. So the other thing that I have heard so many of my patients say is that they are just so sick of cooking. So this slide is for you. If my previous one, you were just going, yeah, there's no way that I'm doing that. No way. This is for you. So, have you found yourself making best mates with your Uber Eats delivery driver? Your package delivery driver, all of these people who are now just integral staples within our life. Let me tell you, you are not alone. There are so many people that I have seen that this is just the same story. So many of my current clients, especially with this round of lockdowns, I think that it's been incredibly with their bodies and that kind of thing. So they're feeling really burnt out in the kitchen and really struggling to put together any meals, let alone something that we would deem a healthy meal. So I guess that is to say, we are living through a time which is incredibly stressful, right? It's a marathon of stress, anxiety, uncertainty, worry about what the future holds, all of these different things. So understandably, that malaise that everyone is kind of feeling is playing a role within how we feel in our day-to-day lives. So again, with a little bit of woo recommendation, but firstly, if you find yourself having one of these days where you just feel like it's too much to put together a meal and it's just all a bit too much, I want you to take a moment of self-compassion. So these are really tough times that we're living through. I always remind my clients that, because it's easy in the moment to think like it's just normal life. You know, it's not. This is really tough. So my recommendations is having a couple of dead easy, simple meals on hand. You can slot together with, you know, a couple of ingredients that are, you know, filling, make you feel good, and you can just kind of get on with your day. So a couple of examples are having like a veggie omelette with some mixed salad, you know, getting a barbecue chip from the supermarket and then chucking some salad on the side. The other thing could be packets of like fish and steamed veggies that you can pop in the microwave for 2 seconds. The frozen meals, so that's another one. They're actually heaps better than they used to be in terms of nutrition content. So having your freezer stocked with some frozen meals is a great idea. Just something that you can on those nights go, yep, this is what I'm having. Chuck it in the, you know, microwave or the oven or whatever works, and reheat it so you're ready to go. So some examples that we really like, that we've tried and we have, you know, looked at the nutrition content and all that kind of stuff, is Supernatured. So they're available at supermarkets, so they're pretty good. The other thing is We Feed You is another really good one. It's based, so it's like chef-made meals, and they're not too expensive, which is also good. So they're a couple of options. Those days where if you're just, you know, you're just feeling like you don't want to do anything, absolutely fine. But yeah, it's pretty much a staple with most of my clients now that I'm saying, let's just have a couple of go-tos, or, you know, a bit of meal prep from doubling, you know, the portions that you do for your regular meal, chucking in the freezer, just something for those days where we just need something to nourish you. And then we can move on with everything happening. So the last little bit that I have to chat with you guys about is making healthy choices with takeaway. So look, there's absolutely nothing wrong with having a burger and chips from time to time. However, if you're searching for something a little bit healthy or you know, different option, I've got a couple of examples that we can chat about here. So firstly, fish and chips. You know, great, easy option. Usually they're pretty cheap as well, which is a really good thing if you're on a budget. So think grilled fish, small portion of chips, side salad, just to kind of make your plate look a little bit more healthy. So in terms of, I guess, the different, you know, different orders at different fish and chip shops as well. Some places do sweet potato chips, which if they're not your vibe, go with your regular ones. It's not too different, but they are really rich in beta carotene. So, you know, popping in sweet potato chips could be a really good option. So pizza. The recommendations I have around pizza is making sure that it's a thin crust. Probably not a stuffed crust as well, because that's going to add a lot of saturated fat. So thin crust, adding some veggie toppings in there. Again, you know, putting some side salad on the side. I think having those packets of salad that you can get from the supermarket and just chucking it in, you know, chucking it on the side of your meals can be really good. So Chinese, there are a lot of beautiful stir fries and different options when you're ordering Chinese. A lot of the time I recommend going vegetarian, so looking for things that are a little bit more rich in veggies and colour and fibre, and looking for whole grain sources of carbohydrate. So white rice is fine, but keeping it to a serving size that is, you know, about the size or a bit less than your fist. is key. Indian food as well, sagaloo or paneer or different veggie options are, again, the go-tos that I'd recommend. Everyone loves a good, butter chicken, and all of those things are fantastic, but they are higher in cream and butter and, again, saturated fat. So branching out a little bit, looking for some veggie options are a really good idea as well. So they are a couple of my examples that I wanted to give you around ordering healthy food from your takeaway shops. With OnCore at South Melbourne, as James mentioned, we have some here on Tuesdays. We also do these free phone consults, which if you have, a couple of burning questions or just want to suss this out to see whether it would be a good fit, they're a really good option. You can book in via our website. This is, I guess, all of our details. So you've got all of our different communities. We'd love for you to, jump in and chat with us and, reach out to us with any questions and that kind of thing. But for now, I would love to take any questions or thoughts that have come up during the presentation.
Caity, can I just say thank you ever so much while we just wait for a couple of questions. Thank you ever so much for presenting to us. And I think from my own experience, I've sent some of my family to the guys at OnCore Nutrition. Even from the UK, I've sent them to the team OnCore Nutrition. And we just think they're awesome. Not just from a dietetics perspective, where they know a wealth of the research, and Caity quoted a few things there, but also just all the different practical tools. I think we don't take into account all the time. So that's, the girls are great, and particularly over joint health and it's really married as well, strength and conditioning. Good. I do have my own question. If I get to go to work, right? I get to come into a workspace and meet people. My typical downfall is at about 5 p.m. when I'm walking the front door. Is there anything I can do, or anything that I should do as I walk in the door that's just going to help me manage any sort of first tips before I reach the fridge immediately?
Yeah, well, if you were my patient, JC, what I would say is I'd look back to are you having an afternoon snack? Or are you having something, coffee or something to break up because it's a long wait from lunch at 12 to dinner at 5, 6, 7.
I think it's I'm just always sort of problem. So certainly 5 p.m. When I walk in the door, I go to the fridge, and that's always my downfall. That's the point that I shouldn't eat. So if there's any quick tips there, that'll be amazing.
Yeah, I guess I would just say implementing that 10 minutes. So, taking a beat, going for, do you have a dog, JC? No. Okay, you've got daughters though, right?
I've got a daughter, 2-year-old. Yeah,
playing with her, kind of doing something for 10 minutes and then checking back in and going, okay, where am I at? Am I legitimately hungry? And then, by all means, pop into the fridge. But then if you're like, actually, I'm feeling pretty good, I'm just going to wait till dinner.
Awesome.
Then doing that.
I'm going to hold on for about 10 minutes in, which is cool. We've got some questions that have just come up. And I love when we do dietitian presentations because we always just get such an array of questions. First question from Alison. How many nuts is a healthy portion for a snack, and which type of nut is best nutritionally?
Whoa, great question, Alison. And again, this is something that I've really recently been talking about heaps, so right on the money. So a very clinical response to your question is 30 grams. 30 grams is a serving of nuts. However, if you're like me, before I actually measured it out, that probably doesn't make a lot of sense. So really a small handful, depending on how big your hands are as well, but a small handful is a good portion. In terms of which is the best nutritionally, there are, nuts are pretty good in general. The ones that we know that are like absolute nutrition powerhouses are walnuts. Brazil nuts are really good. They're really high in selenium. Walnuts are really great for our brain, and they kind of look like a brain. So it's rich in omega-3s. They're really good. Almonds, again, really good. All of them are, to be honest, are pretty nutritionally dense. Just kind of depends on what you enjoy. So that's what I recommend.
hopefully that's answered Alison's question. Sarah Miller has written cheese is something that sometimes we all struggle with. Any tips on how we can be enjoying cheese but limit weight gains? That's a great question.
Yeah, so cheese is fantastic. So I'm right there with you. The thing that I would recommend is serving out, I guess, portions. So serving out a couple of slices of your favorite cheese, making it mindful. So those practices I was describing before, where you're sitting down, having a, having a moment, enjoying your cheese board, enjoying all of the different flavors, that kind of thing. And then checking in with yourself to see where you are in terms of whether you're full. Because often, especially with good cheese, it has quite a strong flavor and different textures and all that kind of stuff. So when you clue into that, you'll find that you probably won't eat as much, because if you're not multitasking and doing other things. So just portioning it out and then enjoying it. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. But the idea is that you're likely to listen to your body's cues a little bit more and not overeat to the point where you feel uncomfortable, and that can add to kind of weight gain as well.
I also think just putting less on your cheese board as well, because I think we're all guilty of that. That seems to be the cheese shelves at the supermarkets at the moment always seems to be sold out, because I think a lot of people are treating themselves on a Friday night or a Saturday night for cheese and wine, because there's not much else that we've been doing. As I said, Caity, thank you so much for today's presentation. We are very, very lucky to have you in the team. I'm always quite amazed at how much of the research and how much you can put that into clinical practice, and certainly all the clients that I've spoken to that have gone through OnCore Nutrition have gone really, really well and made some big outcome changes, whether that's eating better, whether that's losing weight, whether that's just feeling healthier from a rheumatism factor or not.
It's
So that's awesome, Caity. All right.
Great. Sorry, the internet's a bit tough. Okay, thank you so much. My pleasure. And thank you very much